he ends up driving a truck. He said it only took about 6 months for that entrepreneurial business guy to kick in and go, okay, wait a minute. First of all I have to do is back in this dock. I just back in the dock and you pay me. So he bought a truck like 6 or 7 months in, but he saw the business. He just sees deliver loads, make money. And he says the trucking is the easiest business he's ever been in. Comes with its challenges. But if you'll run a trucking business like you would run any other business, what the profits are, there's no ceiling. But if you run a trucking business the way about 90% of the trucking business runs a trucking business, you're going to have heartache, failure, bankruptcy, repossession, divorce, and it will be a disaster. It will destroy you.
And now, Tony, we welcome in podcasting royalty, truck podcasting royalty. It's a real honor, Chris Polk, to have you join us today from Blue Ribbon Podcast. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate y'all having me.
You bet. So typically we do the old boring intro, which I'll cover quickly. It's not boring in your case. Started trucking in 97, made the jump to lease operator sometime in the early 2000s. Then you became fleet manager for Blue Ribbon, where you oversee operations and maintenance for trucks in the fleet and mentoring customers. You play a lot of musical instruments. I'd love to talk to you about that later as well. And you and your lovely family reside in the great state of West Virginia, just across the mountains from myself. But Chris, I like to introduce people by quoting them. And you tell me if this sounds familiar, and then I want your comment on it. Hear me clearly. If you fail in business, guess whose fault it is? Yours. It's not corporate's fault, not agency's fault, not the government's fault. It's nobody's fault. So if you can man up enough and be mature enough to say it, I tried it, it didn't work, and the common denominator is me and my actions. I failed. And now I'm going to have to figure out what to do something differently so I don't fail again. Does that sound familiar, Chris?
It does sound familiar. I think I've heard that guy before.
Not that sums up everything, Chris, about you and your philosophy, but Tony and I really appreciate the way you tell it as it is in the trucking business.
All right, Chris. First of all, I'd like just for you to take a few minutes. Tell us a little bit about you, and why do you get into why podcasting?
So, I used the truckers connection was always the radio, and back in the day it was AM radio, and then this miracle happened around 2004. We got satellite radio, and I started listening to a show out of Alabama called Rick and Bubba. And it was basically 5 guys. They're just buddies. And they do this show and they just have a good time and they're just talking. And so I had this kind of fascination with radio. And at the same time, I recognized podcasting is the ultimate free speech. It's the ultimate way to provide value to someone at no cost, And so there came a point where I believed that the only way I was going to increase my income as a truck driver was to own a truck. I don't believe that anymore, but at that time I did. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, well, I've got to be an owner operator. How do I do this? And I researched all I could and I talked to everybody I could and I ended up leasing a truck. And I found that, boy, if I would have known that before, this would be that much easier. So I go through it till I end up at Landstar. And it was 2015, I believe. And I said, okay, I've got some experience. And having walked through some of these doors that I had to kick open because there was nobody saying, oh, well, here's how you do it. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do this. So I literally Googled, how do you podcast? And I figured out how to record an audio file, upload it to a website, get it syndicated to iTunes, and the American Truck Driver podcast was born. I did it, which I learned really hard that working full time and doing a podcast is hard. It's difficult, and you forget. And then you're driving down the road and you have all these great ideas, and you don't write them down, and you forget about it. Then it's time to podcast. You hit record, and you just sit there and you stare at the microphone. And you have nothing to say. So my podcasting was very, very sporadic. And then, but I did chronicle the ups and downs from when I started and how I started and how I was doing. And then when I failed in 2017, my business failed. And I did a few more episodes throughout that time, and I explained what had happened. And when I met Larry, my life turned pretty hard, one way. And I got to the point where he's such an amazing storyteller, and he's got this unbelievable history of all the different things that he's done. And when I first came to him, he and I were lonely drivers. We'd get on the phone and talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I thought, somebody's got to hear these stories, because I'm as much educated as I am entertained. Well, that's podcasting, education and entertainment. So I finally cajoled him into, let's record a podcast and let's tell your story. And the first time we tried to do it, he was in Laredo in a thunderstorm. That didn't work. And we tried it again. So finally we got this thing recorded. And I'm like, okay, there it was. And he always says he had never listened to a podcast until he was on one. And so we record that one, and we're like, okay, well, that wasn't hard. So let's do another one. And I think we did one on fuel taxes or a couple hot topics. Well, all of a sudden the phone starts ringing with really good drivers who were interested in learning what we had to teach. And so my desire in the beginning with podcasting was to teach and at least give someone a leg up or a step ahead if they wanted to try to come down this owner operator path. And then it became the best recruiting tool that we could have ever developed. And of course, we weren't smart enough to even realize that until the phone started ringing. We're like, holy crap, this is a recruiting tool, and has been. And so we've refined it over time until here we are today.
So where did Larry come from?
Lord have mercy. Well, they broke the mold on that one. Larry's from Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky. His dad was a parts manager at a Chevrolet dealership. Maybe it's a Pontiac dealership. He's real specific about that stuff. And so naturally, Larry went to work for the parts department. Well, in the late 70s, early 80s, he made a name for himself going in and fixing parts, service, and body shops in the late 70s and early 80s when we had high inflation and nobody was buying new cars. And so you had these dealership managers that were looking at this thing that they were required to have, but they didn't know anything about parts, service, and body shop. Well, now they got to figure out how to make it money. So Larry was the fixer, would bounce around from dealership to dealership, going in and making their parts, service, and body shop profitable. At the same time, he is chasing his passion of photography, and over 30 years grew himself into, one of the highest paid and biggest photographers in the state of Kentucky. And his mother had always worked in a dry cleaner. And so at one point he opened a dry cleaner for her, which ended up being 4 locations. So he has this incredibly rich history in business since 1977. When he retires from photography and is sitting around with nothing better to do, he ends up driving a truck. And, he said it only took about 6 months for that entrepreneurial business guy to kick in and go, okay, wait a minute. First of all I have to do is back in this dock and deliver load and you'll pay me. I don't have to have Yellow Pages ads. I don't have to do marketing. I don't have to do cold calls. I just back in the dock and you pay me. And of course they're like, well, yes, that's absolutely how this happened. So he bought a truck like 6 or 7 months in. We still have that truck. But he saw the business where I'm old school trucker, chrome and big hoods. He couldn't give a shit less about any of that stuff. He don't care about chrome. He don't care about, the history, Smokey and the Bandit. He couldn't care less. He just sees deliver loads, make money. And he says the trucking is the easiest business he's ever been in. Comes with its challenges. But if you'll run a trucking business like you would run any other business, what the profits are, there's no ceiling. But if you run a trucking business the way about 90% of the trucking business runs a trucking business. You're going to have heartache, failure, bankruptcy, repossession, divorce, and and it will be a disaster. It will destroy you. So his passion for business, and he has the heart of a teacher. He don't need to do this. He's made his money in his life. He's almost 70 years old. Um, but he does this because he loves to watch the growth. It's almost like raising kids. He
Mm-hmm.
loves to watch that growth and how people, when they get it, and then they turn around and they start acting like business people. I mean, that's his absolute passion, and it is mine too. Um, but that's kind of where the both of us converged. He was so frustrated with truck drivers. When I came along, he was getting ready to sell it all and quit. He was like, "To hell with this! I'm done dealing with these idiots
Mm-hmm.
and these morons and these people that they don't want to learn anything. They don't want to listen. They're narcissistic, self-centered, spoiled brats. I'm out." And then I came along and reinvigorated his desire, and we kind of picked everything back up and started building.
Well, Chris, let me tell you, I've listened to several of y'all's podcasts. I like the combination of the two of you guys and how you guys do blend well together. And I'll tell you, the thing I like the most is the passion. You don't care what the hell the people are on the other end, who they are. You're going to tell them exactly how it is. And you're right. You can make a lot of money moving trucks. I mean, one of the podcasts I listen to from you guys is, you talk about making $500,000 a year off a truck. A
Mm-hmm.
$500,000 a year. Now, when I heard that, I stopped, I rewinded it, and I re-listened to about 3 minutes going, did I hear this right? $500,000 per truck. Most guys make $65,000, $70,000 is what they make.
Mm-hmm.
They struggle. They barely get by, and then fuel goes up, their number one expense, and that's going to kill them. But, that's the part I think they were missing all those years. I used to go to truck stops. My dad did this for us too. We would make these cards. They were 4 inches, 3 inches width and 8 inches tall. And they're just a solid card stock. And we had our own printing press, and we would print these brochures. Be your own boss,
Mm-hmm.
start your own business, and we'd go in and we'd tell the lady at the fuel desk, look, where can I stick these brochures for the trucker? We're going to help him get his own authority and get his own permits and all this stuff. And they're going, heck, right here would be the best place. And it may stay there for a day. It may stay there for 6 months. And truckers would call in and they want to talk. Teach me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here for hours. There's no internet. There's no book they could buy that says, here's how you do it all. What do? They talk to the next guy. So they go, oh, you got a better job. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go work for you. I'm going to be with your team. It sounds like it's all this great stuff, but he still makes $70,000.
Yeah.
So what's going to really interest me is how the hell do you make $500,000 per truck? I mean, is this team drivers? Is this, the truck never stops?
Well, I mean, obviously got to understand the market we were in at that time. Right now we're looking for about 350. In this market,
Okay.
which is down. Well, it's normal, for, in a normal time, but hell, we haven't had a normal time in a long time. But, I mean, by 5 years ago metrics, the market's not all that bad right now. It's flooded with too much capacity because everybody and their brother, which happens when the trucking market spools up, as it does every 5 or 7 years. And people see that money and they're like, well, I've got to go buy a truck. And they go buy trucks. They buy the wrong trucks. They pay too much for the trucks, especially in 2022. My God. People paying $200,000 and $250,000 for a truck. It's insane. So we did a YouTube video. I produced a video about a truck my best friend bought. He made some money in crypto in 2020. And he's like, I want to buy a truck. And I'm like, okay, well, I want you to find one less than $10,000. And he kept sending me all these trucks. And I'm like, nope, 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 nope. Trust me, you'll know when you find it. Well, he found one for $5,500. Had a transmission problem. Took our mechanic up there to look at it. Mechanic says, yeah, absolutely buy it for $5,500. We towed it to the mechanic's house. The mechanic had it for a few months. We ended up having $40,000 in that truck, including the purchase price. I put it in service in July of 21. And in July of 22, I ran a 12-month numbers on it. It was $450,000 gross, $315,000 net to the truck, after Landstar took
Mm-hmm.
their percentage. The driver made 90, Zeke made 45, and we made 48. There's a $180,000 profit. So if one person would have owned it and drove it and managed it, they would have netted taxable income $180,000 in 12 months. Now, do I expect a truck in 2023 to do 450? No, probably 375, 400, if we work it. But one of the big things that we do is we work the trucks. Larry calls it the Landstar Early Retirement Program. Okay. So you have your typical company driver that's driving 3,000 miles a week, and they know that there's money. They don't really completely understand how the market works, but they know there's money out there in owning a truck. And they're like, well, hell, if I owned the truck, I wouldn't have to deal with this person and this person and this person and this person and all these people that they hate. So they go to Lone Mountain or wherever and they get a truck, and and they do the math kind of, and they're like, well, I'm sure I can pay a $2,500 a month truck note. So they get the truck and they come to Landstar. Well, here's the thing about Landstar. Landstar is not going to push you. If you don't work, they're not going to call you and ask you where you are. Only if you keep their trailer idle for more than 10 days, they don't care. So if you do the average, which the Landstar BCO average is 1.7 loads a week, because there's nobody telling them what to do. And so if they want to go home, they just go home. By God, it's my truck. I'll do what the hell I want to do, and I'll go home. Or they sit around waiting for $4 a mile freight that's not coming.
Right.
We do 5 loads a week. So we utilize these trucks 120, 130, 140,000 miles a year. But everybody's making money, and that's what we're out here to do. We're out here to earn a profit. We're out here to deliver a profit to Landstar, to deliver a profit to Blue Ribbon, to deliver a profit to the truck owner, and to provide the driver with an opportunity to learn this lunatic way of doing business that we do, the master class, so that in 18 months, they can turn the key off on our truck, get into their own truck, turn the key on, do everything that they did yesterday for us. Now they do it for themselves, but now they know how to do accounting. They know what their fuel mileage is. They know what their fuel cost percentage of revenue is. They know what their maintenance cost is. They know how to pay their taxes. They know how to do bookkeeping and accounting. They know better than to walk in the accountant's office with a shoebox and dump it on their desk and run like hell.
Mm-hmm.
We're teaching people how to run legitimate, sustainable, successful businesses.
Well, truckers need that, man. They try, and let me tell you, there's a lot of damn good truckers out there that they work their ass off. They work on that truck. They keep that truck moving. I've watched guys go millions and millions and millions of miles in a truck. And they baby that thing. That is everything to them. But the complicated part is you got all these rules, you got the regulations. The states have enough trouble on their own understanding, wait a minute, you just came from this state and now you're coming to our state. The rules are different. It's like, how can you go to a guy that's, that is educated, he's smart, he can do a lot of stuff, but now you're throwing at him all these years of regulations that, I've been in this stuff for 33 years. And, I learned stuff every day of things that, I didn't know that regulations had that.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you make money, deal with the regulations, drive safe, don't cheat your logs, drive the hours you should, get your rest, but keep them trucks moving to make money. I mean, and that's the thing. So many of them, they give up so quick because number one, money.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them, they get out there, they get started, they go buy that new truck, they get that insurance, they find that broker, whoever's going to give them the loads, or they go to Landstar or somebody and say, come on, let's make some money. But they don't understand what they're getting into. And to give Landstar some credit, they got a lot of drivers, they got a lot of trucks, they push a lot of freight through there. But it's the stars, it's those guys out there that work their butt off, but do it smart. Turn down a load because, it doesn't make sense to take the next one. Don't just take it and say, I'll figure out when I get there. Figure it out before you get there. Think a little ahead. I love the episodes and stuff that you guys had that you talk about fuel, okay, and how much the trucking industry spends. It's the number one expense for a trucking company is fuel. No matter, maybe it's the Tesla truck next, but the thing is, the fuel cost is crazy out there, and I've watched it go from $1.20, a gallon, to $4 or $5, $6 a gallon, and it's like through my life, I'm like, how did this happen? And then you start realizing the MPG these guys get, and how much money they have to spend on this, and it's like, this is ridiculous. We created a website called fuelsurchargeindex.org, and it was created to help the drivers and fleets and even the shippers understand transparency. Here's a route that you took. Here's every truck stop on their route. Here's what their fuel price was that day. So this should be what your surcharge is based off, because that's your route, And people, you can, as being a driver, that's the one thing that I know you guys cannot predict is the fuel.
Right.
You cannot predict how much fuel. Sorry about that. That's the kids' school calling. But the thing that I look at, trucking industry is not that difficult. It's not. If you go to the right team and you work with the right group that's going to educate you and show you the right ways and how to track your MPG, how to track your fuel, how to look at things, because 2 months, 3 months down the road, you do your IFTA and you file your tax. Say, well, heck, why am I only getting 5 miles to the gallon this quarter? Last quarter, I was getting 7.5. Well, you should have looked at that months ago. You should have looked at that pretty damn quick. And there's easy ways to do that. There's very, very simple apps out there and everything else.
So you'll love this. Larry being the numbers guy, when he first came to Landstar, there was a deduction on his settlement for fuel tax, and he was like, "Okay, well, where's the breakdown of the? You just pulled a number. Well, where's the explanation?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we have an IFTA report we can give you." Well, yes, absolutely. I would like you to give me that. And he's like, and they're like, "Well, nobody ever asks for these." Right. So every month, he does the reconciliation on the trucks. And of course, we're tracking all of our fuel mileage and fuel purchases and fuel gauges. So we already know, we're trying to buy the cheapest fuel that we can buy. But the fact that most people don't even know, and of course, IFTA is the one conversation that starts more fights than liquor. I don't think it's all that difficult to understand, but boy, people can make it complicated, and it's just not. But there are people. What we found through training people, and I think this is just a kind of an American society thing. People want a blanket answer so they don't have to think. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Okay, well, what I have to do is tell you why. And if I can get you to understand the why, the how then becomes clear. So I've heard, oh, well, only buy it in the low tax states. No, only buy it in the high tax states. And I'm going, no. Get out the BSE 9000, the bullshit eliminator, and use a calculator and decide how to buy your fuel based on the price that day on that route in that state. Make a mathematical, logical calculation based on information and then buy your fuel. But if you want just this blanket answer, well, I can't give you blanket answers because they don't work. We try to reduce tolls when we can. Well, do you want me to run the toll road or not? No, I want you to do the math. Well, where do I find the toll rates? GOOGLE. That's how you find the toll rates. Every toll authority in the United States has a website with a toll calculator on it. So open your phone, go to the website. Okay, this toll on this road on this day is going to cost $75. So how much fuel can I burn to go around it? Do I have time to go around it? Do I have to run the toll road because I don't have time to go around it? These are kind of very logical things, but logic is not a thing that we do in this country anymore. And so, we're trying to teach people the why that gets to the how. Why do we work to save fuel? It's our number one cost. Why do we buy fuel the way we do? Because you have to consider, IFTA and look at the actual wholesale cost of the diesel. Why do we
Right.
do this? Why do we do that? Then you go, oh, okay, well, that's why we're doing it. So here's how we're going to do it.
Yep. It makes a lot of sense. It really does, Chris. And I've watched more businesses fail, go out of business. A year later, they're back doing it again. I mean, I've watched guys have 15 authorities in 10 years and fail and fail and fail. And they'll get investors and, they'll have the loads. They just don't know how to manage the business. And
Right.
and you have to. The money just don't come and not stop. I mean, you're going to have times that, shippers just don't pay you on time. You're going to have problems where, fuel skyrockets and you didn't bid the load right. And all of a sudden you're having to eat that difference. And there's just a lot of risk that is on a owner operator out there to try to survive as a big fleet. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I've really enjoyed the last 32 years watching the industry change so much, because back then, everybody said, oh, you're just a trucker, dude,
Yeah.
you got to be, them truckers are a hell of a lot smarter than what you give them credit for. Mostly even those old guys, they did things, they watched, they monitored, every time they get in that truck, they write down that odometer and they know how many gallons they put in and they do the math and they'll say, well, I got this miles per gallon on this trip, and they would compete. They will actually go out there and say, hey, buddy, what did you get last time on yours? Well, man, I'm up to 7 miles of the gallon. How the hell did you do that? Well, I put this stuff on my trailer and, hey, but you know what I did do? I bought better fuel. I quit buying the really cheap fuel out there because that's what it was cheap crap. I learned to buy better. I learned to go in and negotiate. I mean, one thing that I learned through the years I deal with every truck stop chain. They buy data from us to know exactly what their competition is charging for the fuel, and then I take the data from them and I sell it to their competition, and about 12 years ago, the truck stops came to me and they said, we need a better way to expose to the industry who we are, what services we offer and everything. And so I started helping them build some technology to kind of, put all your information in here, produce all these brochures, let them know. But really what they wanted was they wanted everything to be secret. They didn't want anybody to know they had the best apple pie there is in the world. Well, then how are you going to get people in? You got to tell them. But over years, they were literally driving down the road 50 miles, 100 miles to get fuel prices. And they changed 4 or 5 times a day at a truck stop. So, I mean, to see somebody back then, that really understood a business that survived were the guys that watched every penny, the guys that knew exactly where they're going to stop and buy fuel. They estimated where they're going to be if they need to rest, and they only took the loads that made sense, and it to me, you just got to have common sense, but you also have to get with a company or get with someone that has that experience, because you're not going to learn this in a day. You're not. It takes time and you're going to get aggravated and you're going to get frustrated. But if everybody, it's kind of like having a kid.
Exactly.
I believe everybody needs to be able to go to class and pass a test like you're getting your driver's license. You pass the test, then you get to have kids. That's what it should be about, not this trucking stuff. It's complicated. And you're going to put somebody in a 80,000 or possibly a 200 and something thousand pound missile going down a road, and he's not knowing the regulations. He don't even know how to really drive a truck, and he's only been doing it for 2 months. It's scary. It really is. Well, Chris, let me ask you, you mentioned IFTA. When you look at IFTA taxes, why, and it's really cool that you look at it this way, because when we came out with fuel purchase optimization in 98, everybody laughed at us. The trucker says, you can't tell me a better way to optimize. So we did 2 things. We said, here is your 4 places to buy fuel, the number of gallons to buy. Okay. And we're going to save you this much off the average along that route. But what we also did, we said, but here's every option you have along that route and all their prices, and here's all their amenities and their services, and they have McDonald's or whatever, but here's all the data you need, Mr. Driver. We got more acceptance because they wanted to look at that sheet. They wanted to make their own decisions of where they're going to stop. Why? Because there's rewards. I mean, you get a reward program at some of these places, man, you can have a free steak dinner if you fill up, or if you buy X number of gallons. That may be worth a lot to him because maybe he's not paying for the fuel. But when it comes to IFTA, can you explain why? why is it that, I should take the state tax rate away and look at the true cost of fuel? Why is that important? Why not just buy the
Right.
cheapest tax rate?
Well, you have to start with understanding that IFTA is kind of like your withholdings on your paycheck, right? And of course, we have people that want the government to take more from them every week, so they get a big fat check back in April. Giving the government interest free loans, but all you're doing at the pump is paying into the fund. That's all you're doing. But if you don't like Pennsylvania's, what is it, 74 cent now fuel tax, don't drive in Pennsylvania. That's the only way you can avoid it. That the paying at the pump has nothing to do with paying that tax. So we always show we'll show two examples. We'll show, excuse me, Erie, Pennsylvania on I 90, and we'll show Kingsville, Ohio on I 90. And they're not
Mm-hmm.
20 miles apart. But Ohio has like a 35-cent tax, and Pennsylvania has a 74-cent tax. And I'll show that almost, not every, but almost every case, the actual wholesale cost of the diesel in Pennsylvania is lower than it is in Ohio, even though Pennsylvania has a 74-cent tax. But people don't take the time to understand that if you drive in Pennsylvania, you owe, for every gallon you burn, not mile you drive, every gallon you burn in that state. So if you drive 300 miles in the state of Pennsylvania and you're getting 6 miles per gallon, you owe them for 50 gallons times 0.74. I can still remember when I was a little kid, I would see big trucks that had, 16 license plates on the front of them. They
Yep.
were cab overs and had all these license plates. Well, now I understand that the reason for that is because you had to buy a fuel permit in every state and they'd want you to get a plate. And then if you drove through West Virginia, well, you had to stop and buy enough fuel in West Virginia to pay that tax for whatever gallons that you were going to burn while you were there. And so I have said that IFTA is pretty much the only thing government has ever done where they didn't make something worse, because now we just pay into the fund when we get fuel, and they do the return quarterly. And of course, Landstar does it monthly, but the return is done quarterly. They take the miles you drive, divide it by your fuel mileage or the number of gallons that you bought. There's your fuel mileage. You drove this many miles in that state. You owe for that many gallons. Done. It's super
Yep.
simple and super easy. But when you're looking at the price of fuel, you have to remove the IFTA from the equation because it doesn't matter. What matters is the wholesale cost of that diesel. You should be getting a discount. Landstar probably has the best discounts in the industry. But whether you're on NASTIC or whether you're on a fleet card or whatever you're doing, you have to take IFTA out when you're looking at the cost of fuel because it does not matter.
And you talk about all those license plates back then, and I remember all this, and every state you go to, if the state didn't have reciprocity, you had to get a different plate for each one. And then you had to get the different decals for all the different fuel, like you're saying. And a good example, Texas and Louisiana both have a 20 cent per gallon tax rate. And I know a guy that lives in Beaumont, had a trucking company, and he bought all of his fuel there in Texas, every bit of it. And he had his own, tanks and everything in the yard. So he brought it in, bought a large quantity at a time, and he probably had 100, 200 trucks. But every single quarter, okay, he showed a huge credit of tens of thousands of dollars that Texas owed him back. It took 4 quarters before Texas gave him his tax back. But Louisiana says, hey, ours is 20 cents too, but you didn't buy any fuel here. But you burned all these gallons, so you owe us $10,000, $15,000, whatever it is. Magically, it added up the exact same number of gallons that he needed to get back from Texas. But Texas held on to that money for a long time. But you have to pay them. So for 4 quarters at $15,000 per quarter, they had to pay Louisiana and wait for Texas to give them back that 1 quarter. It was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And so when IFTA came along and then IRP, it was, how can we simplify this? How can we go out there and have one tax return? And I'll tell you, we used to sit there with calculators and add up everything. We used to take the IFTA returns, put them into, and the different state returns, put them into an actual dot matrix printer, and we wrote a program that filled in the blanks for us in the end. But I mean, we used typewriters, and that's how we filled out these things, because you can't read all the handwriting all the time. And so and then states got sophisticated where they want to scan them in now. It just got to the point where you file 50 something returns like that across North America, and you're waiting for half of them to send you money back. IFTA says, no, you're going to send me one check for the balance. So, if I owe you money here, the state owes you money back, it averages itself out. And you're right. At the end of the day, what did you pay for fuel? That's what matters. Do you want to save money today? Heck, this is how you do it. You want to save money at the end. You don't want a big IFTA bill at the end of the quarter. Do what some drivers do. Make sure you pay all your IFTA tax. But guess what? You're going to spend thousands of dollars more than you would have.
Yep.
People don't understand, and it's complicated. ProMiles has a fuel purchase optimization module we've had since 98. You have IDSC, which is a TMW suite product that they've got out there that does optimizations well, but I don't think they have that many customers left on it. And there's a Manhattan. That's it. That's the only true optimizers out on the market. And we've got tens of thousands of drivers that log in our online ProMiles. They put in how much fuel they're starting with, how much fuel they want to end with, what's their MPG. And then we do things we call absolute and preferred. I absolutely never want less than 70 gallons in my tank. But I'm okay having, maybe, 120 gallons. I'd rather stay like that. But I'm willing to go in between if I have to get to that next cheap stop. Mm-hmm. How do you do this in your head? How do drivers sit there and kind of figure this out? Most of them couldn't. And so we just said, here's the solution. You plug in these things, how much fuel you want to buy each time. You want to fill up every time you want to do it. What are all the options you want to think about? But here's the biggest challenge. People optimize today when they bid on the load. And they say, well, this is where I'm going to tell my drivers to buy. 2 days go by. They pick the load up. 2 more days go by after they deliver. Those prices have changed all over the place.
Yep.
So if they would every day when they get up say, all right, I'm starting new again. Here I am. Here's where I'm going to go to the end of the day. Where should I buy my fuel? How much am I starting with? How much I want to end with? Because maybe I want to end with enough fuel to get the heck back out of California, so I don't have to, or Pennsylvania, so I don't have to pay that tax, because then you have to wait to get that back. So, dude, I really, it's really cool to listen to people that have understood how complicated life was before. And that's where I want to ask you about the mile tax conversation. And I don't know how much you know about this, but IFTA cannot continue to take out of the general fund to pay for the tax deficit that it has right now. I don't think it's going to be that much longer, and it's going to have over $200 billion in debt because fuel tax just isn't paying it. So now you got electric vehicles. Now you've got other vehicles prepared by other type of energy that is not taxed. Well, wait a minute. MPGs are going up. They're not going down.
Right.
People are getting better at this. So the government it kept saying 20 years ago, we don't have enough money to pay this. And so now Connecticut, January started a mile tax, and they never had a mile tax before, but they need to find another way to collect it. And so we're either going to go back to the days before IFTA and file all these different tax returns all over the place, or we need to take what IFTA's done and use as a platform and do it that way. But now your next challenge, Chris, is this. Is it fair, in your opinion, that the government comes to every truck and says, give me your total miles you run everywhere. Tell me the total miles you run in each jurisdiction, and I'm going to charge you a rate per mile. I'm not going to do a fuel tax anymore. What do you think about that?
Well, being that taxation is theft, if we the people are going to use the state as a revenue collector and distributor of funds to fund projects like roads and bridges, I think I would love for us to start with, how about let's stop wasting the money that we're collecting? Let's start there, because we know damn well that the money that we are putting into fuel taxes is not all going to the roads. They're wasting it as they do. Now, for the people that were raising hell about Connecticut and I'll never drive another mile. Okay, well, what about Tennessee? They charge ad
Mhm.
valorem tax. Oh, you didn't
Mhm.
know about Tennessee, so you can't be pissed off about something you didn't know about. But now that you know about Connecticut, you're going to throw a hissy fit. Look, the state's going to do what the state's going to do. It's a black hole for money. Um, the roads should be at the top of the list because it's something that benefits every human in commerce. Um, if the state, and I mean like the West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, if the state is going to be in charge of the roads, then yeah, just let the state handle it. But of course, that's not how we do it. We've got federal grants and federal money and state money, and you got all this mismatch. And of course, I live in West Virginia, which is the federal government's 35-year-old kid that won't move the hell out of the basement. So everything we do here, I mean, my God, everything in the state has Robert Seabird's name on it because he was the pork king. He could
Mhm.
get all that federal money, and that other dude that was in Alaska, they were the two biggest pork producers in the Congress because they could put their name on something and fund a bridge and fund a school and fund this and fund that. And the whole thing is a disaster that's probably getting ready. Without going too far down the rabbit hole here, but I do want to say this out loud. I don't think that in 5 to 10 years anything's going to look the way it does right now, and I don't think the state is going to exist as the way that it does right now. So I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Let me be very clear about that. I'm very optimistic about the future. I'm very optimistic about the market. I'm very optimistic about freedom and liberty and all this stuff. But the market innovations that are happening right now concerning, currency and all this stuff, I just don't know that it's going to matter. They're going to waste the money. They're never going to have enough money. They're going to figure out new and creative ways to try to take it from us. So, is it fair? Hell no, it's never fair, and it's not ever going to be fair. Um, but it seems to me that they should be able to fund the projects that need to be funded off of the money that they're already getting. But like I said, the market innovations with more vehicles getting better fuel mileage, which creates less taxes. Now we have an interesting. I would love to hear you talk about this. We have an interesting problem. I guess you could call it here at Landstar. If you get more than like 9 miles per gallon, when Landstar
Mhm.
calculates your fuel mileage, they will put you down to 4.5.
Mhm.
Well, we've got like Steve Crone, for example, has a lifetime average on his truck way over 10 miles per gallon. Um, I mean, they don't want people to cheat, but if you have someone like Steve that has put all of this time and money and effort into making his truck get 10 mile a gallon, well, his IFTA report should read 10 mile a gallon, not 4.5.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's been a challenge, but as these trucks are getting better and better fuel mileage, you can't just penalize us and say, oh well, I mean, yeah, I know you got 9 miles a gallon, but too bad we're going to charge you for 4.5. No, 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 no. We're not going to do that. That's
Yep.
Is the government pushing them to do that because
No.
they just want to do that because they don't want to get in trouble?
No, what happens is when you file an IFTA return, you file it with totals. So basically, you're saying, here's what my total fleet has done. You
Mm,
divide up the total miles by the total amount of fuel. So you got these guys that are getting, they getting 3 miles to the gallon. Why? Well, they're not turning or they're turning way too many receipts, and they're not turning any trips, any miles. They're missing something. Something isn't adding up. But that 3 miles to the gallon is going to take that guy with 10. You get enough of them, it's going to drive it down. And so when you look at an IFTA return and say, well, I'm paying it based on a 6.2 miles per gallon because that's what my fleet gets. Those guys at 9 miles to the gallon should go in and say, no, recalculate that tax summary using my MPG, not your fleet's MPG. I know that's what you're paying it off of, but why am I being penalized? Because I bought a better truck. I spent a lot more money on a truck. So there's less fuel that has to be bought. But now you're telling me I got to pay more tax than I should? More. This doesn't make any sense. But what happens is you do the math, you add up, if you generate it by each vehicle and you add it all up, it doesn't add up correctly. Why? Because you're only talking a couple of decimal places. And so because of that, it will never add up properly. And so to a fleet's benefit, they go, well, if I'm paying 4 miles to the gallon, then guess what? That's what I'm going to charge you with. And that's what you're going to be penalized with. And so that's when I would suggest that you have a conversation with Landstar, with whoever the carrier is, and say, look, this is what I'm getting. I would like to, and show them that you understand what's happening. And you'll be surprised how many fleets will actually recalculate it based on that unit's MPG, mostly if they've got a high unit. Why? Because what did you just do for the rest of the fleet? You brought their MPG up because you had a high MPG. You've helped all those other trucks and all those other guys that had older trucks, or trucks that didn't get good gas mileage. You're helping them, but you're being the one penalized.
Yeah.
And when you have an organization or a trucking company that's made up of so many owner-operators, it's hard. I know it's so difficult for a Landstar or any of these large fleets that you mentioned to be able to satisfy every owner-operator because, some's going to win, some's going to lose. That's why you got to be smart. If you're going to lease your truck onto a company and you're going to give them a piece of what you're generating of the money, then in my opinion, it's a business deal. You have a business relationship with that company. And if their relationship with you is going to cost you money, it's not beneficial. Change.
Right.
Go to another trucking company that will, but just learn, understand. But there's nobody in the federal government that says you must do this. No, it's all up to the fleet on how they calculate it. Now, to be fair to the fleet, yeah, I'm paying based on this MPG. But wait a minute, you got to throw a little bit more into this than just saying that's what I have to pay, so that's what you're going to be calculated by. And that's how they get away with it, because the government says it's okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you something else. You talk a lot about fuel efficiency and all that, and we've talked a little bit about electric trucks. What do you think about an electric truck?
I think they're cool. We went to Gatlinburg a couple months ago for a volleyball tournament, and I spent 2 days walking around Dollywood with a guy friend who's in the EV charging business, and he educated me a lot. There was some stuff that I needed to be corrected on. He took me for a ride in his Tesla. Wow, what a machine! I mean, what a just unbelievably fascinating machine that thing is. I, however, I'm not cool with EVs when you consider the environmental damage that's created through mining to get what we're going to have to create all these batteries. So I don't believe them for a second when they say we're doing this for the environment. I think that's a load of crap. I don't think it has anything to do with the environment. I think that electric trucks can be, um, uh, they can be useful and they can be practical in certain applications. I don't think they're practical for over the road. I think they would be practical in a hub and spoke. I think they would be practical in distribution point to distribution point, 200-300 miles and back. But I'm really long on blockchain and what the potential it could do to completely rewrite everything that we're doing. I interviewed a guy, gosh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. It was a broker in Toledo, and he said, "I will not retire as a broker." He said the broker model's over. Nobody they just don't know it yet. So if blockchain does what I think it's going to do, I could be wrong. I'm okay with that. But if blockchain does what I think it's going to do, and it's going to completely revolutionize final mile, I think it's going to completely do away with LTL. So all of these top heavy LTL companies that got all these legacy costs, I think they're screwed. I think they're out of business. They don't even know it. I think it's going to change how freight's moved. I think it's going to make it 10 times more efficient. I think it'll eliminate deadhead. So to me, individually and personally, I think electric trucks are kind of a distraction because I just don't think it's going to make that big of a deal. And even Elon Musk said that even if you stop producing internal combustion engines today, you're 25 years before you're all electric, because you've got all of this, you're not going to make gas, oil, and diesel and natural gas disappear overnight. So I'm absolutely not on the thought process of, oh, we're in trouble, the electric's going to replace us. We're just not there yet, and I think we might be 50 years before we're there. I think they're cool. I think they're interesting, but I just can't get past the environmental destruction that is coming from what we've got to do to the earth to get these batteries. So I'm not a fan.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on they are cool because my daughter has an M3, and I'll tell you, when the first time I sat in her car and she says, "Dad, hold on, watch," and she just punches it, and it's got 4 motors on it, each wheel, it's all-wheel drive, and that sucker went so fast. Within a couple of seconds, we were doing over 60, and it's like I have never in my life rode in a car that had that much G-force or whatever that is that pushes you back. I mean, it's like it scared the shit out of me. And then it scared me even more because I knew that she's out there driving this car, and relying on this car to do things for her. It's kind of scary. We're dancing around with things that, when you start relying on a piece of equipment making decisions. I mean, autonomous vehicles, let's talk about them. Okay, now you got the electric. The next thing is these vehicles don't even have a driver. They're just going to go up and down the road. They're going to do everything. But guess what? They have to go through some of these back roads and within these cities, just like everybody else. So Dallas has an accident. It's on a major route there. And you've got these 10 autonomous vehicles behind you, and everybody stops. Well, the officer goes through and he knocks on each window and tells you where to go. And he gets to those trucks. It's like, do I call the number on the side of the truck? What the hell do I do? That's where the DOTs are very nervous right now. I mean, I can route a 2 million pound load for the DOT, but they're more scared right now how they're going to deal with a limousine, a taxi, a pizza delivery vehicle. How are we going to manage all of this autonomous vehicles going up and down these roads if we can't even handle the ones we've got? So it's going to be interesting to see. The battery piece, and this is the thing that really blew me away. I do believe, as you, that there is applications where the electric piece makes a lot of sense because, number one, they're going to start putting panels on top of trucks, on top of the trailers. They're going to make the windows. They're going to make everything just start taking in the solar to help power it. But if they don't, there's not enough power grid in this country to support the amount of power needed to charge all of them. However, you've got what scares me the most is what's happening. Well, everybody wants an electronic car because my daughter pays no gas. She pays probably $20 a month, if that, for her home charger to charge when she's at home. She bought the Tesla, pre-ordered it, so she has lifetime charging. So there's no cost, none. She don't have to worry about doing anything but rotating her tires, basically. That's about it. Now, those batteries go bad, that's going to kill us. But they're under warranty for 300,000 miles. Well, let's see if they last, okay? Because that's the part that scares me is those batteries go bad and somebody's got to come up with $20,000 or $30,000 to replace them. But in certain aspects, I think that electric truck going between 250, 300 miles, you get to the next place, you pull it in, you plug it up, you take the trailer off, another truck grabs it, he brings it on. But it is said out there it's going to take 1.7 number of the vehicles to be able to do long haul trucking with electric than it can today with combustion. Now, there's hydrogen. We can do that. Do I want to drive in a vehicle that has hydrogen? Bomb. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Boom.
Yeah.
I'm not a good driver. I wreck. And no, it scares me. But I don't know what's going to happen. But the thing that scares me the most is all these electric vehicles are going to come. We're going to be powering them. The solar flares from the sun's going to come. kill our grid. We have no power. So now you have all these vehicles sitting there that can't move. Okay. Then you've got all the vehicles left that all the people that are pretty smart will take and put their trucks up, put their cars up and all that stuff and hide them as long as they can. But then they're going to go, hey, I can go get gas. But guess what? The demand's different. So that gallon of gas is going to cost you $25. Then all of a sudden, they are forcing you to move into electric. They're forcing you to go to something new and snazzy that is just another way to figure out a way to generate revenue differently. And I mean, I'm all for electric. I really am. I think they're cool. I think it's really neat. I think it's, I hate smelling gas and diesel. I haven't went electric with my truck because I haul 4,000 gallons of water behind it. And I, got 5,000 pounds in the bed of the truck. Those electric vehicles just can't do that right now.
Well, I made a mistake in 2006 when it came to technology. My sister was dating a guy, and he was well off. He was wealthy. And he bought the very first iPhone that came out. And if you remember, there was no subsidy. You could only get it at AT&T, and you had to pay like $650 for this first iPhone. That by new standards, that iPhone would barely turn on, And I said these words. I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Nobody needs a phone that'll do all that. I've got a Motorola Razr, and that's all I need. Well, I can run the entire business on this. Right. I mean, I don't need a laptop. I barely need a computer. I went on a trip with my wife yesterday, and I took my iPad with me, and I can run the entire fleet. Everything that I need to do, I can do with that iPad. So I learned an important lesson there to never poo-poo new technologies just because I don't understand it. Because as we now know, Steve Jobs knew what we needed. We just didn't know what we needed. And he was like, hey, here, have some of this. And we went, and the world changed.
Yep.
So I know that if I start poo-pooing electric vehicles, people are like, oh, you're just, old and curmudgeon. No, because I'm talking about practicality here, and to circle back to part of the earlier conversation is one of the big mistakes that people make getting into business is they think they're the customer. And you're not the customer. Okay. Nobody gives a crap what your truck looks like. All right. So you can go spend $250,000 on a big, shiny, long hood Peterbilt, and my $5,000 uglier than homemade sin Freightliner will hook to that kingpin just the same as yours, pull that load down and back it into the exact same dock that yours is, and know the customer doesn't care because all they ever see is the inside of the trailer. So if not for the state forcing money in R&D into electric, I don't even think it would be a thing right now. I think it would be something sci-fi deal that, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? But without government subsidies, Elon Musk doesn't have what he has today. And I'm not a hater of Elon. I think Elon's a cool guy. I mean, he's a visionary, and he's brilliant, and he's all these things, but he wouldn't be anything without all of the subsidies. And so I'm a 100% believer in the market. If you look at human history from whenever the beginning was, 1,000,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever it was, human ingenuity and innovation always wins every single time in all of human history. Matter of fact, there has never, ever, ever, ever been a time in all of human history that the bad guys ever won. Ever. So but especially here in American society, we are pelted with fear 24/7. Fear, scary, train wreck, cloud, big truck, wreck, Ukraine, war, damnation. It's just constant fear all the time.
Yep.
I can't make decisions based on fear. I cannot do it. I have to base them in mathematics. I have to base them in logic. I talked to a driver candidate the other day, and he said, well, I'd love to come to your program. Just hope China don't. I'm like, dude, what the hell does China have anything to do with you coming and doing a truck drive program? I'm gonna turn off the television. you're literally bringing China into a conversation about getting a job and doing a training
Mhm.
program. I'm like, dude, I couldn't give a shit less about China or the Communist Party or this one or that one or whoever, because that, to me, those are distractions that take me away from the focus on my customers. And
Mhm.
my value is 100% built on my customers. And if I'm not serving my customers, I have zero value. So again, I think they're cool conversations. I'm glad that we're playing with the technology. I think it will be very, very useful in time. I've got some Milwaukee, drills and impacts. I mean,
Mhm.
that battery technology is, I mean, it's unbelievable. 500 pound-foot of
Mhm.
torque, and by pushing my finger, it's amazing what we're doing with batteries.
Mhm.
But I'm just not going to take my eye off of the ball. And the ball right now is training our driver candidates, serving our customers. Everything else is just noise.
Yeah. Well, we got to keep things moving. And talking about that, I mean, truck navigation, routing.
Oh, God help me.
Let's talk about that. I mean, and keep in mind here, and you don't have to hold things back. I've been doing mapping and routing for 32 years, and every day I realize how outdated, inaccurate the information that we collect and we manage, and how dangerous it is for drivers to rely on this information to get from point A to point B. But what scares me even more is drivers that listen to a navigation, whatever it is, and they literally go off the cliff.
Mhm.
They do not care what the sign is looking them in the face saying, this height is only this big, or trucks can't come through. I got a big truck with a circle line through it. I mean, duh, but no, my navigation said I had to turn left here, but it said one way. I don't care. My navigation said I turn left.
Yep.
And so what's your experience and your thoughts about navigation systems?
Well, everybody here in the Blue Ribbon program learns very early on that if the words "my GPS said" come out of your mouth, you better hang on, because you're getting an ass chewing like you've never received before. But I'm going to go a little bit philosophical on you again here for a moment. The problem is not the technology. The problem is not the routing. The problem's not the mapping data. The problem's not the road signs. The problem is the appeal to authority. It's a logical fallacy. I've got a slide in one of our presentations that's it's like a referee at the football game, and he's blowing his whistle.
Mhm.
And he says, we have a logical fallacy on the field. You are appealing to an authority that is perceived as an infallible expert. Okay, Rand McNally's not an expert. Garmin's not an expert. Hell, Google's not an expert. You are the professional truck driver in charge of operating that vehicle. Now, I came from a time when none of that existed. I had a paper
Mhm.
map. I had a CB radio. I didn't have a cell phone. You know, break 19. Anybody ever heard of this place? How do you get in here? Well, anybody got directions to this place, or call the customer. But the it's not just that they don't know how to read a map. That's a problem. Even
Mhm.
had one of my guys came from a very large company to us. He was a trainer, senior trainer, God help us. And on the first load, I sent him, to Pittsburgh. And I said, "Hey man, you got some hazmat on here, so you can't run the turnpike because of the tunnels." So I've got my phone in my hand, and I'm going, "Okay, well, you need to turn here and turn here and turn here and turn here." Silence. And I just got that feeling, and I said, "Hey buddy, do you know how to read a map?" He goes, "Oh no, we weren't allowed to have maps." That's not a BS story. I've confirmed it with other people.
Mhm.
New drivers, we are not allowed to have maps. Well, why? Why would you not allow them to have maps? Because you want
Mhm.
them to be blind, mindless robots that will do whatever the hell they're told and never ask any
Mhm.
questions. Just do what the box on the dash tells you.
Mhm.
And I mean, yeah, there's some intellectual laziness there. Like you said, if it says no trucks, set the brakes.
Mhm.
If it says 12.2 and you're 13.6, set the brakes and call somebody.
Mhm.
But just continuing to drive until you have a convertible is not an
Mhm.
option. But dude, I've watched people, they'll follow that damn GPS to the bottom of the river and wonder why they're wet. Well, hell, I don't know how I got here. I mean, I'm awful wet, you know? And so I love technology. I used a GPS as a guide, as a tool, as a
Mhm.
reminder, but I build the route. I look at Google, I look at a map, I look at what Rand McNally or Garmin, whoever says, and then I'm going to check that with Google, or I'm going to check that with
Mhm.
my Rand McNally Atlas, and then I'm going to pick the route. And the GPS can keep saying turn right, turn right, turn right. Well, I'm just going to keep on going because I'm in charge. But we don't do a very good job society wide of empowering people to make decisions on their own. It's, well, you better do what I told you because I'm the authority. And if you do anything different than that, matter of fact, this same guy that came from this company told us that one time he was stuck in traffic somewhere. The road was shut down, so he took a detour in order to make on time delivery because he was going to be stuck in this traffic for hours. They fined him $50 for going out of route. Like what are you trying to teach people at that point? You're
Mhm.
a training company. This guy is a trainer. So I'm about to get in another rabbit hole, but again, I love technology. I think
Mhm.
I always wonder why Google hasn't gotten into. I mean, can you imagine if Google just took all the truck data and put it in their stuff? Rand McNally would be out of business in 30 minutes,
Yep.
you know,
Well,
but
and
for
you know
whatever
what it
reason, they
is?
don't.
We partner with Google. We actually use their tile servers or satellite imagery and things like that. We've worked with Microsoft, with Bing. We've worked with Apple, and you got a bunch of these guys out there. But there's only about four of us that literally have been routing trucks with true mapping for years, 30 something years, and I can tell you, it still isn't perfect. It's a guidance. It's to get you where you're going. It's to give you suggestions, and it's difficult to drive a truck and try to figure out where to go and where to turn. And I tell you, these navigation systems, they come in handy,
Hmm.
but it's kind of like your wife sitting next to you. There's sometimes you just don't listen, you know? You just don't, because if you did, you know what's going to happen. And so you deal with the consequences later. And it's like, yeah, but baby, if I would have listened to you, I would have gotten in trouble because there was a cop right behind me they didn't know about. But all right, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and the CVSA came out with this thing. It's called, Universal ID. Now, we had a podcast that I think it went out last week. Maybe it's going out this week about it. Where we had a conversation with them, and the big thing is what's going on is CVSA is the guys that handle enforcement. They're the guys out there that are going to pull you over, look at your truck and see what you're doing right or wrong. Their key is today they look at the side of your truck, they get a DOT number, they type in that number, and they pull back the trucking company. But what they really want to know is which truck in that trucking company is that truck. And there's a reason. It's not that I think in some ways people are going, oh, you just want to know everything about me. You want to know who my driver is. You want to know all my personal information. You're digging for stuff that you shouldn't even need. No, what they're trying to do is they're looking at technology going, well, if all these trucks could talk to each other as it's going down the road, like this truck knew there was a problem, coming from the other direction, somehow tell that other truck there's a problem going ahead and let them know before they even get there. Let's let these things kind of talk to each other. So their thought is if all of these pieces of equipment, these trucks, you just send out a beacon, just boop, boop, this is who I am. This is who I am. And all it says is here's a number, a VIN number. Let's just use that. This is a VIN number. At that point, their system can automatically kit back to the office and come back in and say, this is who that VIN number is for. And based on inspections, this guy had brake problems for the last 3 months. Well, we're going to pull him over. Let's see if he got his brakes fixed, right? Versus going, well, let's just pull somebody over, pull up your DOT number, and let's just start this merry game of inspecting you. And oh, I'm so sorry, you're just inspected 10 miles behind, and I can't grab their inspection report. I can't go by that. So you're going to have to wait another 20 minutes with me. So I can walk around and give you time that you don't have to wait for this. So to them, it was, let's come out with a universal ID for every piece of equipment, which you could say is a VIN number. And all I care about is which truck that is and what company it is and who owns it. That's it. That's all they want to know. Now, the federal government stepped in and said, wait, if we do that, we want all this extra with it too. And that's when things kind of got crazy. A lot of drivers came out and said, this is wrong. We're not going to do this. You're not, I know that officer would really love to know who's driving that truck. But again, I think you're crossing a line here. This is not what we're looking at. So CVSA is really trying to find a way to say, if I'm going these rural routes, these back roads, and there's 10 trucks, by the time I type the first truck in, those 10 trucks are gone. And one of those trucks was a guy that is about to kill somebody because he's out of his hours. He's always out of hours, but nobody's ever busted him. That small percentage of those bad drivers out there is what they're trying to catch. So what do you think about that? What do you think about the government wanting to know what truck in your fleet it really is? Do you care? Does that matter to you? Do you think they're crossing a
line? There is a line between, basic constitutional Fourth Amendment protections, right to privacy, and being in, being in service, being operating commercially. I think from the driver's side of the table, I'm still technically a driver, even though I haven't hauled a lot of loads in the last couple of years. From the driver's side of the table, I'm going to tell you that I have been inspected 3 times in 11 years. And my fleet probably sees 4 inspections a year. And, these trucks are running, 120,000 miles apiece. So, one of the issues here is I think there's a false sense of security about who's being inspected and how often.
line?
Because with 3.5, last number I heard was probably 3.5 million trucks. There's not enough DOT officers in this country, period. Now, let's be real clear. I'm not advocating for my DOT cops. I have a very jaded view of this because I see the big, road check every year. And my response to that is, hey, citizen, for 3 days, they're going to get all the low-hanging fruit and flapping fenders that they can find. The other 362 days, you're on your own because there's just not enough. I mean, I see the scales closed. Dude, I drove today from Louisville to West Virginia. The cruising speed of traffic was almost 90 miles an hour, and I saw one cop, But, they're just doing 85 miles an hour, and they're passing me like I'm tied to a stump. I I can kind of get where the bureaucrat is trying to solve this problem because it's a basic identification problem. The Supreme Court has ruled over and over again that if you are being detained, which you are in an inspection, excuse me, then you are required to show proof of identification. If you're not being detained, you can really tell them to pound sand. But that's not really the case when you're driving a commercial vehicle that's so heavily regulated as it is. So does the DOT cop deserve your identifying information and your credentials? Yes. Okay. Should they log that data in a way that if someone has been caught doing something before, we get a little minority report going to where we can catch them before they do it. Yeah, maybe, but the breadth of the system, the centralization that it would require to be able to achieve that outcome. Well, let me get the bad guy before he does something wrong. I don't see that being practical, and I don't see it working out. Now I see them spend a couple $1 billion to try because they're real good at that. They'll throw $2 billion into something that won't ever work. They'll do that every day. Again, think about blockchain. I see a future where a driver could roll up to a customer bobtail and scan a QR code on a trailer. All right, it's going to Newark. What's in the trailer? Don't know. It's sealed. Hook up to it. Drive to the customer. Geofence says, hey, you're there. Now you're paid.
Mm-hmm.
You get there, you scan the QR code. You know, somebody pulls you over and says, "What's in the trailer?" I don't know. Well, tell me. I don't know. It's none of your business. You know, I mean, it literally could be so encrypted and decentralized that nobody knows where anything is at all. So, are you familiar with a truck wreck yesterday or day before in Arizona? I think it was yesterday where
No.
there was a hazmat spill.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so somewhere in Arizona, big truck wrecks, and there's this orange hue coming out, and of course, everybody's on pins and needles because of the train derailment in Ohio.
Right.
And so some Twitter account, breaking news, you know, picture of the truck, the orange cloud. It was some sign of sulfuric acid or something. What struck me was not the wreck, it was the responses in the comments. Well, how can they haul that stuff on our roads? Shouldn't that be in a secure military transport? Well, number one, it was 2,000 pounds of whatever it was. Okay. I mean, you and I know that 2,000 pounds in a back of a truck's nothing. I mean, that's
Right.
just nothing. I mean, yeah, if it's radioactive or if it's nuclear or something, it's a big deal. But in the grand scheme of things, 2,000 pounds. But I haul stuff up and down the road every day with placards on, and our motoring public is not aware, as evidenced by hundreds of Twitter responses to this. These
Mm-hmm.
people were absolutely beside themselves that a truck could be going down the road carrying a hazardous chemical. Well, I get, okay, they don't know what placards are. We know why we have placards. The
Mm-hmm.
government went to great lengths worldwide to standardize all of these placards and all of this
Mm-hmm.
packaging, and the shipper's responsibility and the carrier's responsibility and the driver's responsibility. And we're all on the same page, and we're hauling hazmat up and down the road every day. Won't think anything of it. You know, I put my placards on, I check my paperwork, I check my securement, I'm good to go. But the motoring public, they're clueless. They have
Mm-hmm.
no idea that a very, very dangerous chemical could be in that truck that they just cut off,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know. So, you know, I have a big chip on my shoulder about CSA 2010. You know what that is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Okay. I got a violation. Well, I got a warning a few weeks ago. I took one load out to Kansas and brought a load back. And on the way back, it's a Friday morning. I get up, I pre-trip the truck, I walk around, check everything, lights, tires, everything's good to go. I drive about 12 miles to an Ohio scale. He pulls me around back. He says, "Your safety score's low. I need to do inspection." I'm like, "Well, here you go, buddy. Have at it. There's a permit book. There's paperwork." I was
Yep.
hazmat. And so he does his thing. He checks my load. He checks my paperwork. Everything's going great. He's like, "Well, let's do a light check." I'm like, "Okay." He goes to the front of the truck, lights, brights, left, right, turn signal, everything. He goes to the back of the trailer, says, "Left turn." I hit the turn signal. He says, "Brake pedal." I hit the brake pedal. He says, "Right turn." I turn on the right turn. He says, "Right turn." Well, right turn signal's not working. So I walk back there and I said, "Well, was the midship light working?" And he was like, "What?" He literally went, "What?" And I said, "The light halfway up the trailer, was it flashing?" Because I'm in diagnosis mode. I'm like, "Why is this thing not flashing?" So I go up and I check, and it's not flashing either. I'm like, "This is a circuit." So I go to the pigtail. I unplug it. I spread the little pins apart. I plug it back in. The light starts flashing. I'm like, "Hey, problem solved." "Well, I'm still going to have to note this." "Okay, buddy, go ahead and note it." So he notes a warning, and I receive a $100 civil penalty from Ohio that I cannot fight. There's no court. There's no procedure. There's no due process. I get a $100 civil penalty. Well, the carrier does, but you know damn well they're not going to pay it. They
Yep.
passed it to me. And so when I have had conversations with law enforcement officers along the way, I say, "Hey, man, how would you feel if I said, I don't want you to write me a warning. I want you to write me a citation?" Well, why in the world would you want me to do that? Because I can go to court. I can pay
Mm-hmm.
the fine. The judge will wipe the violation away, and there's no points. But because of CSA 2010, you give me a warning that I can't fight in court, and it
Mm-hmm.
stays with me until it runs its course. I see CSA, here's my conspirator, my tinfoil. I see CSA 2010 as a way for big corporations to violate expensive guys like me that won't turn the key on for less than 75 cents a mile, violate me out of the industry so you can bring the guy in for 25 or 30 cents a mile. Well, he has no CSA points because he's brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And you're pushing me out and bringing them in because they're cheap, while simultaneously screaming for the last 25 years, driver shortage, driver shortage, driver shortage, driver shortage. Hey, at least be honest. You have a cheap driver shortage. You don't have a
Mm-hmm.
driver shortage. If we had a driver shortage, we'd have a truck shortage. And if we had a truck shortage, rates would be up.
Yep.
But they're not. Rates are down. Why? Too many trucks, not enough loads. Please stop this bullshit about driver shortage. It's nonsense. It's been nonsense since 1997.
I want to ask you one more thing.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about credentials. Okay. One of your podcasts, you guys really hammered on, if you're going to start this business, the first thing you do is keep your receipts. Learn to stick them somewhere. Take a picture, do all this cool stuff because you're going to need that. Even if you don't know what you're going to need it for yet, you're going to need it, and you need it fast. You need to be able to get it. So name them right, put them in drop zone. I mean, your whole conversation made a lot of sense because that's where a lot of drivers fail. They get out there, they get on the road, they start moving, and at the end of the quarter, it's time to do your IFTA returns, and you're like, oh, what miles ago? Well, let me sit back, let me remember what we did. And then it doesn't match what your log says. It doesn't match what your trip record was. Now it's impossible. You'd be doing 180 miles an hour. Now it's all messed up because you didn't just keep track of all the paperwork and everything you had. Well, what do you think about in 2019 in January, the federal government came in and said, we are now going to allow credentials for truckers to be electronic. We are not going to require that you have to have original documents for anything. Because, you as just as well as I do, I mean, back in the day, you made copies of the stuff. You gave copies to all your different trucks, your registration, all that stuff. What do? You get 2 copies from them. You put one in your truck and you keep it here. But what if you lost it? What if it got damaged? Well, you just make a copy, put a copy in the truck. Okay. What's the difference? Well, today, the big challenge is making sure people are legit. Make sure people, the shipper needs to make sure you have all your permits. The receiver wants to make sure. The, enforcement wants to. Now you have to turn those permits in because now you're going to order oversized permits. And, you have to show them proof of these things. I mean, just so much with permits. So what is your thought about moving the industry to electronic credentials? Your registration, your IFTA, your hazmat, everything you can imagine to be just on your cell phone so you can show them. And let me tell you, when we came up with this, it was right after they came up with this proposal and the law saying we're going to go electronic. We're thinking, well, how in the world can we do this? We always have the problem as a permit service, and that's what we always started off as, and we still do permits for people, is you need your permit, you lost it, well, let me get it to you. Oh, you left your permit book somewhere? Let me get all your stuff together and send it to you. And so when we did this, we did a unique part to it. We said, we're not only going to think about the driver and what he needs to do or what the shipper or the receiver needs, we're going to think about the enforcement guy because he wants that information. And so how do they get it today? Well, if you don't have it, then you get the fax number for the scale if he's at a scale, or you go to the local truck stop, you pull over and you have them fax there. You bring the guy here's a copy of my permit. What we did is we put a QR code at the bottom list and we listed all the permits this guy has. But if the enforcement officer has his phone or his device, his tablet, he could scan the QR code, go off and download all these permits. Now he has a true copy of all those permits in a PDF form or whatever on his device now. And at that point, if something was missing, something was lost, the driver just opens his phone up and grabs it and says, here, I could just print it to my printer. I can hand it to you this way. But the government's trying to find a way to simplify this because keep in mind, if they want to know who you are, the next thing they want to know is, well, what all permits do you have? Are you legal for this load or not? Are you missing something? And the amount of time taking to inspect somebody, to go through their permits and go through everything takes a lot of time. The other thing is now you have to know, are they even valid permits? Are they even good? And so if you hook this with the safer system the government has, you can say, is this IFTA license been revoked? Has it been suspended? Without them having to look at a printout in the scale. So what do you think about electronic credentials? Is it something that drivers and that are going to need to embrace? Is it something that you even want to embrace? I mean, do you like carrying around a big book with a bunch of paper in it?
Well, I think this is something that blockchain is absolutely going to solve, whether we solve it now or not. It will be solved. I'm a big electronic record guy. I hate paper. Because like you said, paper gets damaged, it gets wet, it gets lost. Now my friend the civil rights attorney would cave my head in if I ever handed my unlocked personal phone to a cop. So that's a big no-no. Absolutely not.
Yep.
I'm going to have a separate device that's, for business, but you don't ever hand a cop your unlocked phone, period. Um,
And
but
they don't want that either. The officers don't want to grab your phone. They don't want to touch it because
Right.
now they hand it back to you and your phone quits working. Well, first thing you're going to say is, what did this cop do to my phone? So the
Right.
last thing they want to do is
Right.
touch anybody's device.
But yeah, it's absolutely time. I was telling my wife today, and it's so difficult to try to, like, we have three kids between 8 and 16, and trying to explain some things to children born after 2000 is just, because they just look at you like that German Shepherd, like, what?
Yep.
But I still remember the days when I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't have a laptop, I didn't have a computer, I didn't, if I needed to speak with another human being, I had to park this large truck and find a payphone.
Yep.
And use truck stop based fax machines. And, nobody even thought of email. And at that time, we realized how inconvenient it was in real time. It's like, man, it'd be so nice if I had a device like that,
Yep.
Well, now we do. All right. We have these amazing devices. We do have encryption. We do have the technology exists that we can make some things available and other things not available. So yeah, I absolutely think this is a good move, so that I don't have to carry up my wadded up medical card, that again has been viewed by a law enforcement officer 3 times in 12 years.
Yep.
Well, it's been in my wallet, or trying to dig my license out of that godforsaken little plastic thing that will never, ever come out, So yes, I think this is absolutely something that we should be doing. Now, whether or not the state should be the ones in control of the centralized database, not a big fan of the state having that sort of information. But if someone like you guys can connect people together and make it available, then the question becomes, well, if you haven't paid the fee, or if you're not in the group, or you don't have access to that, then you're on paper, which I guess some people will be okay with that. But I absolutely would love to anything to, okay, here's my QR code. I don't even have to roll down my window. You want to know who I am and what I'm hauling, and do I have to scan this right here, and then walk around the truck and check it out, and otherwise leave me the hell alone. Let me go on about my business.
And to me, I think that's what they need. They need to put a QR code on the side of the freaking truck, and you're done. Mm-hmm. At that point, it's encrypted. Nobody can run. You can't just use your phone and scan it and get anything. No, you have to have an enforcement device to do this, okay? And it's encrypted. The other thing is you are the guy that are going to click your phone, and you're going to click a little button, like a little square with an up arrow that says, how do you want to send it? Text or by email. You can put both in, say, go. Here's the 5 permits I want to send the guy. Click it, boom. Now the officer gets a ping on his phone and boom, or on his device. Now he's got all your credentials. Never had to talk to you one time. And we did this 6 months before COVID hit. Once COVID hit, all of a sudden, all these guys went, oh, you guys are crazy thinking about these credentials like this. All of a sudden, enforcement goes, I need your device now. Why? Because we got guys holding paper up to the side of the window so I can see the information, because we don't want to breathe on each other. So electronic credentials are coming. They're the future. They really are. Well, Chris, look,
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Does Alabama still require to sign with a red pen on permits?
Hey, here's the thing. I don't know if on the oversized overweights they do that. I don't really think they do, but I know at one time that you used to have to use a blue pen in certain states to sign certain permits. But now all those permits can be copied and sent by fax and stuff like that, and which very few people use fax anymore. But, they come in black and white sometimes. But they're trying to get things better because, today in today's society, it doesn't take a 12-year-old too much time to create his own, report card. If he's got a few minutes and he can jump on his laptop before his dad gets home.
Listen, I can testify that a 16-year-old in 1992 could do it too, but I'm not going to confirm or deny anything. I'm just saying that it happened back then.
Well, we won't get in touch with your dad and let him know after all these years, because if he's like my dad, he'll still whoop your ass now. What? You lied to me
Right.
back? Now you get 10 times the spanking because of what you did wrong. Chris, first of all, buddy, I would love the opportunity to work with you in the future on your podcast. I would love to join it and be part of some conversations you guys have. And I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but believe it or not, I was 19 years old when I started all this stuff. So I was a kid.
Wow.
I fell out of a dorm room in college, broke 38 bones in my body, and thought I'd never walk again. And 3 months later, I was only walking, I was running. And so, I always believed I could do anything. And that's when my father-in-law looked at me and said, "You're going to go build a mileage guy to compete against Rand McNally?" I'm like, yeah, why not? Now you ask people who Rand McNally is, and 90% of the kids are going, who? Ask them who Google is, Google Maps. And, I know what that is. But, the key is Google cannot route a truck. They don't know the right information to get there. And they don't want to take the time or effort to do it because it's not a big enough market. There's not enough money in it to them, they think.
Right.
But what are we doing? We're connecting these states. So, Chris, I would love to be part of it. The other thing is I definitely going to want you back. We are trying to get better at all this podcasting stuff and getting things organized. And I would like to have you on a call with some of these state officials that we can get, some of the guys from IFTA, and have them. And
that's
you
a
guys
terrible
just
idea.
Go back and forth.
That's the worst idea I've ever heard you have.
Well, what's really cool about it with today's technology, I ain't got to worry about you guys punching each other. You're on that screen and I'm on this screen, so you can get away with a lot.
Yeah,
but
Chris,
that's true. I'm very, very happy to hear that there's people like you out there that you care about the other truckers, the other guys, because you know how hard in the hell it was to get where you're at. And, if and it sounds like all you want to do is help people. And that's a great thing. And trust me, there's a lot of truckers out there. There's almost 800,000 fleets that are legal to haul freight interstate. And, out of them, 90% of those have less than 3 trucks, and those are the guys that are busting their butt, barely getting by, trying to do things. And they're the ones that don't even have time to read Google or anything to learn anything they can. They're just moving. They're trying to get the next load. They're trying to figure out why the other load didn't pay yet and how we're going to make sure we pay our utility bills. And, oh, by the way, insurance now going up on the truck because now you're traveling too much in Houston. I mean, it's just so much to deal with. It's complicated. But I'll tell you, without the truckers, we wouldn't have shit. Nothing. I mean, these 100%. Cool little mics we got, having the rum mojito that I'm drinking here. It had to be brought here by somebody. And trust me, I live in the mountains in Colorado. And when the snow comes and things shut down and you don't have your toilet paper still, it's a problem. But I'll tell you what, I thank every trucker I see out there that takes their time to go over these passes to get me toilet paper. I do. Without them, we wouldn't have crap. Kids don't know what it's like growing up, not having anything and, begging, oh man, I would love to have that new things, this new box of cereal, they're coming up with, yeah, you don't have it down there. Up here in New York, we've got it, well, shit, why can't I get it? Well, now just go to Amazon, order it, buy it. You can have anything you want. So Chris, again, thanks so much for jumping online with us and being part of this. And, again, I would love and enjoy you to come back, and I will put you in a position where some of these guys, because I'd like to raise the heat a little bit, because that's what I do. I like the public and I like the private sector both. And I believe if they understood each other, there would be a lot less conflict, because at the end of the day, it's safety. It's what everybody wants. That's what you want. That's what the government wants. And they want you to be profitable. You know why? The more profitable you are, the more tax they're going to take from you. So they want you to be profitable. They know we have problems parking trucks. They know we have issues, and they're trying to work on some of them. But at the same time, we got a lot of shit to do. We got to keep that freight moving, no matter if there's a COVID or not. You got to move freight. So, Chris, I appreciate you, my friend, and thanks a lot for jumping on this evening with us.
Absolutely. Had a good time. Thank you for having me.